Folks, I'm Jamie Dorley with the co-host, the Godfather, Joe Messino, and we're live at World of Wellness right here at 2419 Baldwick Road, right in the heart of Pittsburgh, PA, Joe. And we're super excited. This is the Wine of Wellness Week in tribute to the late, great international icon, the co-founder of Nutritional Frontiers, Dr. James Weiner. And I know he's looking down at us, very proud, especially of you this week, Joe.
Oh, I'll tell you what, this has been great. It's the 97th, right? 97th Wellness Week of all time. We're closing in on 100.
I can't wait. So we're excited because we have been doing these wellness weeks for over 20 years. And as we continue to evolve with them, we've gotten better and better speakers. A big highlight is all the education.
Yes.
Now, if you're not here live, which there are so many people here, we want to wave to everybody. How we doing, folks?
Hey.
Thanks for all the support. If you're not able to attend live, you can do a live stream.
That's right.
So you could be at your home. You can even be at work, Joe, watching this live on your lunch break, of course.
On your lunch break.
Or if you don't have
with
time,
your headphones.
you can always catch a recording, right? And we bring in these incredible speakers especially during what we consider our roundtable, and that's what we have right now.
Right.
So this gentleman's coming to us all the way from another country, Joe. You know, he's on vacation in Mexico, but he didn't stop there. He's going to keep doing it.
Vacation.
He's going to work with us. He is world omega industry expert, Todd Parker. He was one of my mentors at Nutritional Frontiers, but also at Metagenics.
Yeah.
He worked with Dr. Jeffrey Bland. He was a category manager for inflammation, and he's what helped launch all their essential fatty acid line.
That's right.
Not only the EPA, DHA, but the 720, and eventually evolved the SPM. So we thank you so much, Todd. You're so generous with your training and education and support. We know you're on vacation, so we're going to keep it like me and Joe, short and sweet. So welcome back, Todd Parker.
Jamie, Joe, Dr. Weiner, saludes desde Mexico. Glad to be here.
Hola, muy bien.
You're not getting any Spanish out of me, Todd. Just go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, we all know buenos dias and gracias, so we can just leave it at that.
Yes, we do.
Buenos dias and gracias.
Buenos dias, Todd. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you back on. And we like to have fun, of course, but you've helped us from the beginning of Nutritional Frontiers when the other vendors wouldn't take our calls or meet with us. Todd says, I'm going to help you out because he says, I know eventually you'll be helping me out. So he's always there from the beginning and a tremendous amount of support.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a real pleasure working with Nutritional Frontiers, and I think that, we've put together a really great history here, but for sure the best times are ahead of us.
Oh, absolutely. And you've evolved in the field of omegas. I know you worked with Katie Farmer. You worked with some of the top people in the field, including not only Olaf, but Dr. Jorn Dyerberg. So can you tell us a little bit about your team now?
Yeah, well, right now I'm working with Olaf Sandnes in a company called Win Nutrition. We're kind of a one-stop manufacturing solution for the nutrition industry and top brands. And then I'm also, as you know, involved with the Bering Select, which produces the only wild-caught Alaskan cod liver oil. And I know that you're going to be commercializing that soon. I'm super excited for that. I mean, this material is just very unique. Not only is it sustainably sourced, as you know, Marine Stewardship Council certified, Alaskan Responsible Fisheries, traceable, transparent, but it's really an omega-3 superfood because it has a full range of the omega-3 fatty acids, unchanged from the way they're formed by nature, as well as the highest dietary amount of naturally formed vitamin D, and that's just for starters. So maybe at some point we can talk a little bit more about that and how that product will kind of fit into your line and what kind of patient it would be optimal.
Oh, absolutely. You've been working with us from the beginning. We first came out with the Omega line, then we brought in the Omega 3D, and then the Omega Liquid 2800, and now the SPM. So I'd like to get into all of those, but can you give a little background a little bit on just essential fatty acids? Because I think it's become very confusing to not only the healthcare professionals, but also the consumer. Because there's no shortage of information out there, but it becomes overwhelming. So maybe fish oil in general and how important that is.
Sure. I mean, to me, the most important term here, they're called essential fatty acids, and they're called essential for a reason. And that's because you simply have to get them from your diet. Your body cannot fabricate produce these long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids. So you have to get them in your diet. And there's a lot of noise about, different ratios of, say, omega-6 to omega-3. Most of the top experts in the world, they'll just tell you that you need to get these long chain omega-3 fatty acids in your diet really on a daily basis. This isn't an acute issue, although the activity in the body of these omega-3s, as we know now from understanding the resolvin mediator story, they are continuously acting to help modulate inflammation in the body. But really, this is a long-term issue. You need to keep your cellular level at least 8% for years of your life. And what that'll translate into is lower levels of inflammation, lower expression of disease, and all kinds of things like, helping to stave off dementia, preserving your eyesight, keeping your joints functioning in a way that, is where they have range and they're not giving you pain. So this isn't a category that I really think needs to be overthought, gentlemen. What we're really talking about is something that our bodies absolutely require for many, many physiological processes to function optimally. And you can't really fabricate it. You can, but it's on very low levels. So people out there, find a high quality, pure omega-3 product and just take it on a daily basis, and you'll be doing yourself a tremendous favor.
Yeah.
You mentioned that 8% point, Todd. Yeah. What do people need to take to get to that level? How much?
Well, Joe, it really depends on where they're starting. So again, everything should be kept as simple as possible. The KISS theory, right? Keep it simple, blah, blah, blah. If you haven't been taking omega-3 and you haven't been eating a lot of fatty fish, which quite frankly is most people, then you probably want to be more aggressive on the front end. Let's just pick a number. I think that most people should be taking 2 to 4 grams of omega-3 fatty acids. Now, let's differentiate that from fish oil, because fish oil is often 30% omega-3 fatty acids, 50%. It can be up to 99% when you get into the drug range, which is ridiculous, quite frankly. But people should be taking 2 to 4 grams. And if you haven't been taking omega-3 and you really want to get to that protective 8% quickly, then I would definitely be looking at taking about 4 grams a day for, 2 months. And then for most people should be pretty well loaded up. You can back it down a little bit, unless, of course, you have idiosyncratic conditions like a family history of heart disease, for example, in which case I'd like to see it from the way I read the research, and most experts I know, you probably need to be up around 4 grams a day as a maintenance dose.
Wow.
That's fantastic. And, this goes all the way back to this study right here, Joe. This is what Todd had shared with me about 20 years ago from JAMA, where it looked at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, and it says, well, let's actually test the omega-3 content in the cellular membrane, because if you remember back in the 7th grade, that was a couple of years ago for us, but we drew the cell, and all that fluid in the cell membrane should be, like Todd said, at 8 to 10%. We call it changing the oil, right? And I love what he says, keep it simple. Dr. Michael Wald, who talked for us many times, he says, look, if you get tested and you're low, you'll take fish oil. You get tested and you're good, you'll keep taking fish oil. He said, so I don't test anybody anymore, because like what Todd says, I want them to get 3 grams per day.
Right.
And we're going to show you how you can do that and the differences that are out there. But like Todd said, all these different functions. So Todd, the question I get from maybe somebody that doesn't have, of course, your level of knowledge is, well, how can one thing be helping so many parts of the body? Because we hear it for joint health, brain, skin, heart. So what is the connection with all these?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's 2 things that really differentiate omega-3 fatty acids. One is their structural role, which means they literally get incorporated into virtually every cell in the body. And then number 2 is what they do to help regulate the immune activity. Let's go to the first question on plasma levels that you were both alluding to previously with that graph from JAMA. When you take omega-3, what it does is it basically can push out bad fats or less healthy fats that may be making up your cell membrane. And those fats that it's pushing out are often inflammatory, more pro-inflammatory. So you're just by getting your cellular level of omega-3 higher, you're tipping the scales towards a more balanced immune activity. And also with more omega-3 in your cells, the plasma is more permeable. It responds to signaling factors in the body more readily. you just have healthier cells, which is why triglyceride levels go down when you take omega-3. And then you have really the cutting edge information. These compounds have always been there. Our bodies have always made them. And it's always been in fish oil and, in fact, in algal oil as well, is the resolving mediators or the pre-resolving mediators. So we've come to learn that omega-3, when it's necessary locally throughout the body, not only can get converted into anti-inflammatory eicosanoids and prostaglandins, but now we know that EPA, DHA, and indeed probably DPA all have these downstream pathways that lead to these factors called specialized pro-resolving mediators that help the body to know when inflammation has run its course and it's time to start healing the tissue. And I think if you look at the totality of that, and then I'm really kind of just getting started. We have a reduction in oxidative stress by getting your omega-3 levels healthy. So it's really just a very fundamental thing that we need at adequate levels in order to have optimal homeostasis and physiological function across the board.
I love your description because now we have the picture that supports exactly what he's talking about, right? So the fatty acids become the structure, right? And then they're helping cool down oxidative stress. And I love he said the immune function because we always think of anti-inflammatory. I know, I saw your reaction. I can feel it. So a comment, Joe, because when we talk about SPMs, we've been talking about cooling down inflammation to start the healing process.
Right, because I mean, and the SPMs to me has been one of the best additions that we've ever brought in because I mean it goes to a whole new level of cooling down the body. And when we talk about that and that term that's become so popular over the last couple of years, the cytokine storm, and how to modulate that and cool that down. I mean, that's where, to me, I see the direct relation to the immune system where more people will actually see that benefit right now.
And Todd, I think what happens sometimes is I've heard this for 20 years, but when I heard nutrigenomics, that was a brand new term, right? But we just thought, well, everyone knows this. Can you explain a little bit of how the fish oil and the SPMs actually affect nutrigenomics and gene expression?
Yeah, I think I can say a couple words on that. First of all, the last time I checked, and this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, is that just taking omega-3 in your diet basically turns on or off almost 100 different genes in our genome.
Wow.
And so there is kind of an instantaneous genomic effect. And those genes are mostly associated, not surprisingly, with inflammation. So that's, pretty astounding if you think about it. It's almost kind of an epigenetic effect. And then we also have, as you mentioned, substrates that basically these resolving mediators, which are oxidized, reduced versions. You get the resolvins, the morescins, the lipoxins. There's different categories of these. That's not so much genetic as kind of mechanical or functional. But it's extraordinary if you look at the totality of what omega-3 does, because as we mentioned, not only does it improve the health of every cell by getting incorporated in the plasma, it helps to balance immune activity, it helps interconnective crosstalk between cells and different organ systems and endocrine pathways. And then also it's playing this, active role in continuously monitoring and edging our immune and inflammatory activity towards a healing state.
Yeah, that's the exciting part. And when we look at, you had mentioned the percentages of fish oil. I remember Todd taught me a long time ago that generally if you get a gram of fish in nature, especially cod, it's about 300 milligrams of the active constituents, the EPA and DHA.
Right.
That's the most important part, not how much oil. And he called that the 18 to 12 ratio. And then through technological advances over the last 10 to 20 years, we've been able to refine that oil much greater. So you go from these different concentrations. Todd, can you explain a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of people, we're dealing with a lot of consumers at the Wellness Center, a lot of people that come in here are patients or
And there was a time when the 180 over 120 was all that you could get.
Right.
And the only thing available.
So you still see people coming in. We're going to show you some labels here in a minute, but they say, well, I bought the Kirkland Omega 1000. Isn't that the same? So can you comment on that from a manufacturing standpoint?
Sure. So the preponderance of omega-3 products are made from anchovies. And the catch is now primarily in Peru. And if you test that material, the raw oil, you have about 30% omega-3 in the lipids of the anchovies. We used to call it. It used to be more about 18% EPA and 12% DHA, but that ratio is a little bit squishy. So it's best just to refer to the raw oil as being about a 30% concentrate. So
Okay.
then, if you want to increase it to 50% or 60%, you can use molecular distillation, which is essentially boiling off the shorter chain fats so that you have a higher concentration of the long chain fats or the omega-3. And let me throw in a little caveat and something to think about here. We all talk about EPA and DHA all the time, but let's not forget DPA. All your products have DPA in them. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
we're listing the levels, but that might be something we want to look
No.
at going forward. But DPA
Yes.
sits right between EPA and DHA, and it plays a unique role in the body, and it has unique downstream metabolites. It has its own resolving mediator, so it's super important. And then when you go to the pharmaceutical level, which is say 85%, you have to use a supercritical extraction, which is CO2 under high pressure that fractionates the oils. I don't really buy this story. I think if you have, because all the fats can play a role in your body. So I don't want to editorialize too much, but I'm not quite
No
sure why
problem.
anybody really needs 90% EPA, for example. When
So
you,
Yeah.
ours is coming somewhere around that 80% range or more.
yeah, I think your product is 70, 75%. It's
Yeah.
not it doesn't go through the supercritical process, which leads to an over concentration, in my opinion. For example, there's some drug products in the market that are 95% EPA. Well, what about DHA? What about
Well,
DPA?
that's what I talk about. I have people asking me, well, I want an all DHA product for brain function. I says, the philosophy where you're looking for it makes sense. I says, but what do you think happens to the EPA? We got to extract it, and you're paying for it anyway.
Right.
And I says, and there is benefits of both, and they do convert back and forth. So I like that statement, and it's really an important part of this.
And why why go away from nature?
Right.
Stay with nature. Nature provides all the fats.
And we
You
do
don't
that
wanna
in a
just-
similar mechanism with our greens formulas where we combine the whole food extracts rather than just pulling nutrients in and out. So it's a great explanation. And here's actually a label that we help educate people with because this is actually 25%, right? It's EPA and DHA is only 250. You get some other omegas, so that's that 30% we were talking about, which used to be the gold standard, but not anymore. And then we compare it to the ones you guys help us with. And I've been doing a teaspoon, sometimes it's a big spoon, a tablespoon, but I do it of the liquid every morning now, and I've been very consistent. I'm finishing my second bottle. I used to do the soft gels. I found that I wasn't as consistent because of traveling. So I noticed that the liquid, and as I'm standing here, the hips don't hurt. My balance is really good. It's those little aches and pains where I'm not feeling as much. Even when I tweaked my neck, I seemed like the recovery was much better combining the liquid. So which one do you use, Joe?
I like the liquid. I mean, I'll take a liquid over a soft gel any day. And as far as how much, I mean, who measures, And sometimes I just swig it out of the bottle, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, a teaspoon, a tablespoon, I mean, just get it in your body, right? Get it in your body. And you know what? Don't look at expiration dates. You buy a bottle, take it until it's done. Okay, you can get another one. It's not supposed to it's not supposed to last you 2 years once you open it.
Yeah, in the last 2 years, we actually updated our formulas to the TG triglyceride form, which actually has created more questions. Does it raise triglycerides? The answer is no. So can you explain triglyceride form versus ethyl ester in a very rudimentary way?
Yeah, I think I can do that. First, I just want to say that, like you, Jamie, I'm a big fan of liquid omega-3. If you look at your fabulous product, in one teaspoon, one little teaspoon, you're getting almost 3 grams of omega-3 in a broad
The
spectrum. You're
magic
getting
number right
EPA,
there.
DHA, DPA. So it's a great way to go. Take that teaspoon around meals and put your bottle in the refrigerator after you take your daily dose. As far as EE and TG, all fats in nature are stored in a triglyceride form. Fats that are in our body or in our blood are in a triglyceride form. What that means is, if you look at my finger here, each finger is a fat, and then it's bound to a glycerol backbone. That's a triglyceride. That's how it's stored in nature. Then if your body needs one of these fats, it can break off and go do whatever it needs to do in your body. So ethyl ester is an intermediate step that's utilized when we're concentrating fish oils. When you do an ethyl ester, you basically take all the different fats and you break them apart from the glycerol backbone, and then you bind them to an ethyl ester so that you can get rid of the shorter chain fats. So it's not as natural. And if you look at the studies, the preponderance of evidence says that, particularly on an empty stomach, which I don't recommend you take your omega-3s, but if you do, the TG form is significantly better absorbed. And so people will get more of what they're paying for. But at the end of the day, since omega-3s is something that we all need to take on a long-term basis, it's not a hugely significant area, but it does give an advantage, and it is more natural. And about the triglyceride, when you take omega-3s, actually the exact opposite happens. You'll see your blood triglyceride levels go down, and that's because your cells are getting healthier.
And part of our team and a partner of yours is Dr. Jordan Dyerberg, a cardiologist that's been promoting the benefits of omega-3s and was helped in our formulation since 1971, Joe. You were still on your tricycle, right? It's a long time ago. And he has over 450 published studies promoting the benefits of actually reducing triglycerides, which we feel is a much more important marker of cardiovascular and diabetic risk factors than just cholesterol.
Yeah.
And when you look at our soft gels that Todd and his team did an incredible job with, we just showed you Kirkland's, right? This is 250 to 300 per one. Well, our soft gel is triple strength. And then, so you need 3 of those to get to one of ours, and even has a lot of rancid fatty acids.
Which
To
means theirs is 3 times the price as well.
It should be.
Yeah.
And then if you look at our liquid, they would have to do 9 soft gels to get what you get in 1 teaspoon.
Oh, yeah.
Not going to do it.
Not gonna do
And then what's the other 70%? Very concerning. So we've been utilizing the omega-3s with you and your team, Todd. We're so grateful for all your help, not only helping us launch it, but then making continual updates. And the other thing we have in the soft gel, which we didn't mention, is the vitamin D3.
That's right.
In a natural
Big bonus.
form, right?
Big bonus.
So I like those 2 together, and then we have the liquid omegas. And then, I think 5 years ago already it was, we started talking to you at the Vegas show about SPMs, right? And hey, been working with Dr. Bland and been working on these SPMs, and then here we are 5 years later, and the benefits have been incredible. So can you go in a little bit of the background of SPMs? How did that whole snowball start to roll downhill? And what were the initial thoughts on it? And then what have we seen now?
Well, we saw the not the concept, but the area of resolving mediators, or the science of resolving mediators, just absolutely explode from almost no understanding of these compounds 10 years ago, even though they were present in our products, and our body is continuously making them. And to now, I think I sent you, it was National Geographic. There was an article about resolving
Incredible.
mediators. It's extraordinary. And, for 10 years ago, they didn't even know they existed. And now it's making, headline news as a potential game changer in the control of inflammation. When you understand that inflammation is a driving force behind every chronic disease, and is something that disrupts our normal physiological function and impedes our body's ability to heal itself, it plays a role, but when it's out of proportion, that's the issue. And now we know that one of the most important ways that the body controls that inflammation is by the resolving mediators, which literally talk to immune cells and transmit a message that, okay, thanks for the immune activity and your support here. Now we need to get on with healing this tissue. So it's an amazing dynamic. And then if you look at, again, you mentioned vitamin D. When you have omega-3 and vitamin D, those are probably 2 of the biggest deficiencies for sure across the planet. And they both play that role in halting or breaking or calming inflammation. Active vitamin D, D25 hydroxyvitamin D, in the body is used like specialized resolving mediators to communicate with the immune system and say, whoa, now it's time to heal. Bring in the cleanup crew, bring in the remodelers, let's fix this meniscus in this person's knee, or what have you, just to give an example.
So on this graph, it shows alpha linoleic acid, and then EPA, DPA, and DHA, and then SPM. So the question we normally get is, well, don't I get them from the fish oil, number 1? And number 2, if I'm taking the SPM, do I need the fish oil? So what's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that every fish oil that's ever made has some level of these compounds in it. But what your product does, what your SPM product does, is it gives these compounds at basically hundreds of times what it would be found in the natural oil. And yes, our body is going to take the omega-3 and make these specialized pro-resolving mediators all the time, continuously throughout the body. But when people are in a state where they're not controlling their inflammation well, which is just so many different types of people, wouldn't it be better to give your omega-3s with the higher levels of these, kind of like, it's almost like a Kia. They're almost constructed to become the specialized pro-resolving mediators, but the body can take and put them in any direction they want. So you really give an added support to your body's reparative, immune controlling activities. And so I think it's pretty clear, you know, if you've been injured, if you have a chronic health condition, anything that's associated with excessive inflammation would benefit from the high SPM product.
Yeah, and especially now with the whole cytokine storm, with people either getting the vaccine or getting COVID or both. I've had more friends, families, colleagues, patients, you know, having issues with lungs, having issues with blood clots, strokes, heart issues. I mean, I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. So, folks, there's a gentleman in yesterday, right? Real healthy individual, looked like Todd, a little bit older, and he says, well, I says, you're good. You're doing the fish oil. You're healthy, right? Whatever age you are, you are. You're not on any medications. Take the fish oil. He goes, oh, okay. And then if something's going on or I really need help, I'll add the SPM. I said, exactly. Just make sure you're taking enough of the fish oil.
Well, and that's just it. Todd, you keep saying, you know, that we do make SPMs, we make these pro-resolving mediators from omega-3s. Well, if as a society we're deficient in omega-3s, that's not going to happen anyway. So you've
Yeah.
got to go at it from both
And it's
ends.
completely out of balance. You know,
Gotta
we
go
talked
from both.
earlier about all the different body systems, and
Yeah.
Todd put it in a nice way that, you know, it's the structure, but it's also the function.
Yeah.
Right? So you get both benefits of these, which is unusual for a nutritional supplementation because, you know, you should do one or the other, but I like how they work on both. And you had talked a little bit about this. So can you talk a little more about the signaling of the SPMs or omegas and, you know, what the benefit is to people because, you know, if they're not getting that dose in or they have too much inflammation, where does it intercede?
Are you asking how, for example, like DHA,
Yeah, like
docosahexaenoic
what is
acid?
the signaling molecules, EPA, DHA, DPA versus the SPMs? What are they actually working on? I see all these anti or these pro-inflammatory mediators. Are they actually able to dispel them? Are they actually able to cool them down? How do they work?
Yeah, okay, it's an interesting question. So imagine there's a cell somewhere in our body, and it has adequate amounts of omega-3. Let's say it has 8% omega-3, and it gets an external signal saying that there's inflammation occurring, and we need to take out some of your DHA to make resolvin D2, for example, which is an active
And not to
special.
interrupt, this is what's going on in this picture here. You have these trans fats, hydrogenated fats, pro-inflammatory arachidonic acid in that cell and around the cell membrane.
Right. So you say there's a need for a DHA derived signaling agent like resolving D2. The body would release, the cell would release some of the DHA, which would be chemically transformed in the cell membrane and outside of it and reduced into these endpoint signaling agents, which literally interface with with white blood cells and other immune cells and impart a signal to them. In other words, kind of talks to them. It's really fascinating. And this is going on at all times throughout our body. But like Joe said, if you're deficient in omega-3 or you have some idiosyncratic or, you know, something specific about you that makes it difficult for you to convert omega-3 into these signaling agents, I think it would make a lot more sense to increase the amount of the substrates to make these signaling agents into our diet by taking the SPM product, maybe even as well as an omega-3 product, depending on where you
Right.
find yourself.
Yeah, because depending on the person, the deficiency, the disease state, they're going to probably need to attack it from both ends.
Absolutely. I love the way you describe it. I mean, that was the word that was in my head was fascinating. I know some people may be saying, well, it's a lot of science, but you could actually paints a great picture. You could actually see it happening, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you can see and when you look at, I was listening to Jeff Bland recently talking about genetic determinism, right? And like you said, this is constantly occurring, right? Hundreds of thousands of reactions are constantly occurring.
Sure.
And the way
No
these
stagnation.
intercede the process is fascinating. So here we're talking about the actual effect on the immune system and how important that is with inflammation has two phases, which I had not heard to recently. Can you describe those a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I also wanted to mention, based on what you just said, that it brings up a term that's very much in use these days, and for good reason. It's resilience. We need to help our body have resilience. There's so many things in the modern world: UV light, stress, immune challenges, oxidative stress. There's so many things that are bearing down on our body, and that's why we take things like adaptogens, and that's why all of nutrition is basically adaptogenic. It helps us adapt to the stresses of our environment. And really, I don't think anything gives us more resilience in a sense than omega-3. If you look on this graph, you see that you have these assaults on our body, whether it be immunological or structural damage, and you need to have an inflammatory process to basically clean that up, to kill virus, to break down damaged tissue. That's the initiation phase. But where we really want to be pushing ourselves towards, where the resilience comes from in our health, where we bounce back into our full strength, is in the resolution phase. And that can't happen optimally without the right amounts of vitamin D in your system and the right amounts of omega-3. And for some people, SPMs, those are how the body nudges us back into our natural state, and thereby, I would argue, has a huge impact on our overall resilience.
Yeah, we've actually relocated the omega-3s coming soon in our pyramid to be the foundation. Because I feel if you don't have the right omega-3 content yourselves, we always equate it to a grape versus a raisin, right? That's how the cells tend to look under a microscope when they're not at that 8 to 10%
Right.
concentration
Right.
of omega-3. So I love this one. I know it's a little technical, but this is talking about the downstream production of these different mediators. There's resolvins, there's different types of those, protectins. So can you talk a little bit how the pathways, and that's why we have a more complete formula, because some companies list the 17 and 18, but they forget the 14, right? Or they have high EPA or DHA, but they forget the other components. So can you maybe walk us through this a little bit?
Well, here you see that there are multiple families of these resolving mediators. They're at the bottom of the slide, and that they derive from all three of the primary omega-3 fatty acids. And again, we were talking earlier that DPA, kind of needs to be in the conversation because it has its own downstream agents that talk to the immune system to resolve inflammation and promote healing. And the body is going to figure this out for itself. It'll make these substrates, whether it be the DHA or, as you said, the 14-HDHA, which is the precursor to these resolving mediators at the bottom of the screen. I know it seems a little bit complicated, but it's really not. You have these big old fats that can be made into all sorts of chemicals that talk to the body and the immune system to nudge us into a less inflammatory, more resilient state. So I don't know what else I can add to this
Well, I
slide.
just have a question. So DPA, that's newer for me, right?
Yeah.
I haven't really talked about that as much. So is there new science on that, or has it always been there and we just didn't talk about it enough?
In my opinion, the reason that it hasn't been discussed and studied as much is because when Jorn Dyerberg discovered omega-3s in Iceland, and in Greenland back in the early 70s, as you mentioned, Norway was making margarine mostly from anchovies, and so most of the products to this day, are made from the anchovies, which are pretty low in DPA. So it never really made the conversation. But now people are saying, wow, DPA does play roles in the body. It does have an impact. And it's just another essential fatty acid that you want to get a certain amount in your diet. There's no target here. People get
So
too.
in cod, then, for example, you'll get a lot more DPA.
Yeah, in your upcoming cod liver oil formula, you're going to get probably 2 to 3 times the DPA as you would get out of either sardines or anchovies, the other
He just
primary
let the
source
cat
of
out of
omega.
the bag about our new product.
Well, we better hurry up. There's a product development director just walked by. So, Zach, get ready. Cod liver oil straight from Alaska. So maybe we have to make a trip up there. I always want to go to Alaska. So, no, it's very interesting the concepts you bring about because, what I'm hearing is follow the money trail,
Yeah.
right? This all goes all the way back to margin production in the early 70s. I mean, it's a long time ago, and it's a great indicator of, how one decision like that can really influence so many
Oh
people.
God, yeah.
Interesting enough, when I was growing up, my mom was always on a diet, always had the new fad, sweet and low and margarine. My dad grew up on the farm, and I've heard him hundreds of times say, that food's going to kill you,
Yeah.
right? And then fast forward all these years later, my mom had really bad cancer, which did, lead to her passing away. And my dad, still eats the same way. He'll be 82 this Sunday, and he looks like Todd. I mean, he's in great shape. He has not changed much since I was a kid, and I think it goes back to him eating whole foods,
Right.
and never going after those fad products. He never did that.
Oh, I
which
mean,
was-
they tried to con the whole world into using margarine back in the 70s, right? 60s
Oh,
and 70s.
it was a disaster. It was a disaster.
what a
So
disaster.
what people need to do is follow your instincts. If it's a real whole food, eat it, And what happened literally is the sugar industry put a hit job on fats back in the 60s.
Sure,
And they paid
yeah.
some scientists to say that fats
Yeah.
were causing cardiovascular disease. So people switched to margarine, so they weren't getting their vitamin K2 anymore, which carries calcium away from the arteries into the bones. And it just had disastrous implications. We had this enormous epidemic of diabetes that came out of this. Healthy fats are extremely healthy and absolutely necessary in order for us to thrive and be
I
resilient.
got a great topic for the next presentation now because I'm hearing this whole movement of going to margarine, right? Incorporating artificial sweeteners and high fructose corn syrup. This is like the perfect storm in the 70s,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
And then you go
absolutely.
into the 80s and people are on no-fat diets.
Yeah.
And diabetes, our body weight, everything doubled and tripled. And here we are now, 40 years later, scratching it saying, well,
What
what
happened?
happened, right? We have a $50 billion classification of cholesterol-lowering drugs, and heart disease is still going up. You look at, I want you to
Cholesterol's another good fat.
Yeah.
That they told us was
give
bad.
us a little bit, your background or, your research on these populations, right? Because I read about the Eskimos, I read about in Greenland,
Greenland.
eating these higher fat diets, but not having the cardiovascular disease.
Yeah,
Because
even
people
European
here are
countries.
saying, how is
Yeah.
that possible?
Well, that's true. That's why Jorn studied them in the early 70s because the preponderance of their macronutrients in their diet was fat, like 90%. But it's a lot of people say their diet has changed now and it's become westernized or modernized, so to speak, to their detriment. And now they're starting to see the same kind of levels of diabetes and cardiovascular disease
Sure.
as we all do. So what you put in your mouth and you digest and incorporate it into your body has enormous implications.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to when you and Dr. Bland did that presentation, you factored in the Pima Indians, right? How there were two groups of them, one in Southwest U.S. and some in Mexico, and they were known as having diabetic genes, but when they found out, when they went back and looked at their diet, they weren't diabetics. It was only 5%. The ones living in Arizona were 50% because they ate this type of diet. We've seen this with exchange students from overseas
Sure.
come in and move to Ohio or PA, and they gain 20, 25 pounds in 1 year, and they're going, "What- I didn't do anything. Like, how did this happen?" And I love how we always say, food is information. We got the juice bar cranking. We never stop here at World of Wellness. So, and that's a good way you can incorporate, good information to yourselves is by doing a shake a day, which we are offering here at the Wellness Center. Just want to remind everyone, I'm Jamie Dorley, the host, with Joe Messino, the co-host, and we have World Omega and SPM expert. He comes from us from California. Right now, he is in Mexico. The one and only Todd Parker comes to us with 30 years of experience. I think he started in high school, Joe. He's been doing this so long. And he's so generous with his knowledge and education.
Yeah.
And he's really into this for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And he's helped our team, and we can help millions of people just based on his education. So here's some research showing about, some of the clinical and preclinical observations with mother's milk and pregnancy. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are obviously that healthy fats are critical for a developing, forming fetus or little human, in my opinion. And it's also important, as you see here on the third bullet point, it says SPMs. they've analyzed human milk, and it's very rich in all different sort of active and pre-active resolving mediators. Why is that? And the answer is it's priming the infant's immune system to function in a healthy, balanced manner. So clearly, breastfeeding is a great way to go. I'm not, no need to come down any side there, but if you see that you're not only getting the healthy fats, mostly DHA, from human milk, but also these are resolving mediators, and they have to be there for a reason. Nature doesn't add something to the mix unless it needs to be there.
Todd, what do you think about? Let's get a little bit specific on the SPMs and dosing. I know a lot of people were, is there a definitive guideline? How do you recommend dosing with SPMs?
There is no definitive guidelines. I think that the practitioners need to work with their patients and meet them where they are. As we discussed earlier, if people haven't been taking omega-3 in their diet, then obviously they need to take higher levels. The good thing about this is there's really no LD 50. Well, I'm sure there is. That means lethal dose 50.
Yeah.
If you give this amount to 100 rats, 50 of them will die. With these compounds, these are our body's thirst for these compounds. It would be very, very difficult to OD, so to speak, on either the pre-resolving mediators, resolving mediators, or the omega-3 fatty acids. So pump it up if you're in pain and you have a lot of inflammation. Pump it up. Then when you start feeling the results, you start feeling better, and you start feeling more in your normal homeostasis, then you can back down and get on a maintenance dose. And you just have to discover what that is for you. Those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts?
I find that it reminds me of CoQ10 and DMG combination, right? It's a little higher per day than some of the other maybe low level products. And what I find is over time, when we experiment and our clients do and the docs do, is that we find those higher doses can be very therapeutic. For example, with Parkinson's patients, when we brought the EPA, DHA way up, and then the CoQ10 and DMG, then we saw great results. And we went higher, even better, right?
Yes.
So I feel the same way. For me personally, I find that the liquid omega-3 2800 by Nutritional Frontiers at 1 teaspoon at least per day is a really nice dose. I could really start to feel the difference in my skin, my joints. The other thing is with the SPMs, I've been experimenting because when they first came out, I was taking 2. Then I got COVID, I was taking 3, and Tracy told me to do 3 twice a day, and I could tell the difference. So for me personally, 3 once or twice a day, so 3 to 6 a day, I find is a really sweet spot, and a lot of feedback I've gotten from the field. I was talking to this young lady right here, and she had mentioned that she was doing 2 a day. I said, let's bring it up to 3 or 4 because she's suffering from like post-related COVID issues, right? So I think it's a good time for us to share results that we're getting, be open-minded, but I'm really seeing 2 to 6 a day as being that magical number.
Me too.
Right?
I was, with me, it's more just, wear and tear over the years, but
How about your thumb, Joe?
No?
He's got a bad
that was
thumb
different.
from playing all the video games.
Yeah, well, not those,
And
but
some martial arts, 2 fellow martial artists here.
I had really debilitating pain and loss of movement in my thumbs, in both of them. And I couldn't bend at this joint at all. Couldn't bend it. And it was just getting worse and worse. I tried everything. I even tried laser.
He showed us both because he don't remember what thumb it was. It's been so seriously.
It was both. It was both. Yeah. It was both thumbs. So at the same time, which was really weird. But anyway, I tried everything, including laser, and it wasn't getting the relief until I tried the SPMs. And I was doing 2 twice a day, and that within a week, complete range of motion was back and the pain was gone. So I dropped it down to 2 a day. And then if I have some, soreness or some pain, joint pain or whatever, I go 2 twice a day seems to work for me.
So let's be open-minded, folks. Usually 2 to 6 SPMs per day. Toxicity, we're fine in any dosage, so it's more a matter of compliance. So one of the things is I just got word we're bringing out a 120 count.
Oh.
And right about the time the cod liver oil will be released, Todd has perfected the technology on the liquid SPM. So I know him and his team down in Mexico are working diligently this week on the product. So we hope that's going to come out fairly soon, Joe, right?
Looking forward to it, Todd.
No pressure, of course,
No, they're definitely coming up. Hey, let me just say something real quick. Whether it's a cytokine storm, which is what really takes people down with COVID, right, where you have overreactive immune activity, which vitamin D, omega-3, and SPMs are utilized in the body to control that, or it's your thumb that hurts. You know, those are things that they're major expressions of inflammation and discomfort. But when you get these in your body, it's having the same kind of effect on a very small level continuously, you know, throughout your body. And so you might not notice it, but it's working for you all the time, not just when you're in a chronic state or you've been injured. It's always working for your body.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things too. You notice it when you stop taking it.
Yeah.
You know, believe it or not, I ran out of my house. Of all people to run out of SPMs, I did. I'm shaking. I'm like, oh, I got to get more. So I ordered 3 bottles today. But I did notice when I don't take this 3 to 6 for a few days, I can definitely notice a difference. So here's just a label just to support that we do quantify all the different numbers, including, you know, the EPA DH in here, and also the 18, 17, and 14 fatty acids of specific concentrations. We are recommending about 2 up to 6 soft gels per day. I love the fact how you really stress you got to meet people where they are. So folks, this is like changing the oil in your car. If you haven't changed the oil in your car in 3 years, you probably need to start changing it more frequently to get that quality improved.
I think people change the oil in their car more than they do in their bodies.
You're right, they do, because they won't put things in their cars, but they'll put it in their body, right?
Right.
So, Todd, we really appreciate you making time for us. You've been a really important person on our team at Nutritional Frontiers from day one. You know, your confidence, your trust, your education has been greatly appreciated, and you know, you've been a key component of our team, helping so many people and helping us with our mission of making the world healthy. So we just want to thank you so much.
Thanks, Todd.
Joe, Jamie, it's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to keeping this going with you folks.
All right.
All right, well, enjoy Mexico. Dos hermanos, that means 2 worms, so be careful of the worm down in Mexico. And you may want to bump up your SPMs and fish oil in preparation of your board meetings he's having down there. So.
Yeah, get some liquid cod liver and coat that belly a little bit, Todd.
Well, thanks so much, buddy.
It goes great with mezcal. All right, take care, gentlemen.
Okay.
Thanks so much, buddy. We appreciate everything
See
you
ya.
do, and have a great trip. And folks, those are the type of people we have on our team. Thanks, Todd Parker. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Philly Phil, and thanks for everyone listening.
Hasta luego.